Think your next hire needs a great sales resume? Well, think again. In this episode of Profit with a Plan, Walter Crosby of Helix Sales Development shares why most companies hire salespeople exactly wrong and what to do instead. Discover why industry experience can actually backfire and how to craft sales messages that win trust fast, and why aligning your sales and marketing story is a mission critical for scaling 2 to 3 times. So, if you're ready to stop wasting payroll on the wrong reps and start building a sales machine that performs, this one's for you. Hey, entrepreneurs, are you working too hard for too little profit? Well, welcome to Profit with a Plan podcast, where we help you scale smarter, increase profitability, and build a business worth more, whether you keep it or sell it. I'm Marcia Riner, business growth strategist and profit booster behind Infinite Profit. I've helped countless entrepreneurs to turn their businesses into highly profitable and sale-ready assets, so they enjoy more income now and a bigger payday later on. So join me for practical strategies, expert insights, and proven steps to make your business more profitable, more valuable, and built to last. Today's episode is sponsored by Infinite Profit, where we don't just talk profit, we deliver it. But before we dive in, I've got something new and special for you. What if your entire marketing system could run faster, smarter, and simpler starting today? The Profit Booster Marketing Hub is built for busy business owners who want to have better leads, smarter automations, and more sales without hiring a team or learning complicated tech. For a limited time, you can get a 30-day free trial of the full suite at profitbooster.biz. If you'll finally have one place to attract and convert more prospects, stay consistent with your social media and email marketing, automate your follow-up without sounding robotic, and book more appointments directly into your calendar. Why not stop duct taping everything together and start growing with confidence? So if you've been waiting for an easier way to market your business, this is it. Go claim your free 30-day trial right now at profitbooster.biz. All right, let's jump into today's episode. Our guest today is Walter Crosby, CEO of Helix Sales Development and the host of Sales and Cigars podcast. Walter helps growth-minded CEOs build high-performance sales teams with repeatable processes and reliable revenue forecasting. With decades of B2B sales experience and his no-fluff approach, Walter has created Helix sales hiring process, where 91% of his recommended hires land in the top half of their teams within just 1 year. He's here to challenge you on how you think about hiring, your messaging, and what it really takes to scale a sales organization that performs. Well, welcome, Walter, to Profit with a Plan. My mouth just doesn't want to work today. It's one of those days that I'm all tongue-tied, so hopefully you're going to carry the show.
It happens to be a Monday. That's a normal thing. I appreciate you having me on and the opportunity.
Absolutely. I love it. As a fellow podcaster, I know we both value each other and the insights that you can bring to our joint audiences. But let me ask you a question. You know, some people grew up with like sales in their blood. Was that you, or did you have any other aspirations before you got in the sales side?
To be honest with you, uh, the bulk of salespeople fall backwards into sales. Wasn't really wasn't their intent. I graduated from college, and I remember I was sitting at the Vanderbilt Club in New York, and an older gentleman was like, "What are you going to do?" And I'm like, "I have no idea. Like, I really don't know." And he's like, "Well, have you thought about sales?" And I'm like, "No." So we we talked a little bit about what you needed to do. He gave me a high level sort of approach. Um, what was attractive was that you you get to perform, you get to eat what you kill, so to speak. It was the way it was explained to me. So there's no
Yeah.
cap, right? You could be super successful based on your desire and commitment to do what was necessary. And I was a dumb 24-year-old at the time, so uh, I signed up. for sales. And,
You got hooked with the money. Wow.
but
And so was that older gentleman at the club, was that really the foundation of your sales methodology?
it was the foundation of like go that direction.
Mm,
Because I really had no direction. I graduated from school. Nobody in my family had done that before, so I really didn't have any guidance. And I'd always been successful in the sales roles that I had, talking like paper routes and retail sales and that kind of thing.
yeah.
So I could talk to people. I understood that it was about a big part of sales is doing what you say you're going to do in the
Mm.
time frame that you said you're going to do it. So the idea intrigued me. Something just clicked, and there's no great plan. I mean, my first job, the first the first job I got in New York, I walked out of the interview or started to walk out of the interview. So I had no plan. It was just things that were happening that were fortunate. I just worked hard, but there wasn't a great plan to go be a great sales guy. It's just something that's developed over time.
I love it. And I love the idea that, most people fall into the sales role because either it was a backdoor or something, or they dangled that money carrot and said, the world's your oyster, go grab it, right?
Mhm.
Those are always the salespeople talking to you about getting a sales job. But I think there's like this like crazy skill you have to have, and this like alligator thick skin that says that you can go conquer the world. But it's not necessarily like that, is it?
There's a couple of things I think you have to have. Um, People talk about a thick skin. Um, I kind of position that as our need to be liked.
Mm,
So all of us are human, and we all need to be part of some group, right? It's how we survived hundreds of thousands of years ago. We have family, we have friends, right? So we want to be part of a group and be liked and not be ostracized from the group.
of course.
But in sales, our need to be liked by our buyers, by our customers, by our prospects gets in our way of being successful.
Oh,
So if we need them to like us, if we need them to love us, we're going to have trouble asking the tough questions, or we're going to have trouble asking some of the basic questions that you need to do as a salesperson. So I'm not saying we need to be likable. We need to be able to build rapport and eventually build trust. But
mm,
if I'm talking to you and I need you to like me, otherwise I'm going to fall apart as a person, then I'm going to have a hard time saying, do you have a budget that you've thought about to solve this big, huge problem that you were telling me about? Right. And because we got to go do the stuff that we are told not to do as a kid, right? Go talk to strangers, talk about money, ask tough questions, ask a lot of questions. I mean, as a kid, that was what we were told not to do. And then we
yeah,
grow
shut up
up
and
and
sit down.
yeah. And if we don't ask those kinds of questions as a salesperson, we're going to fail.
Nice. So I love it. So your process sounds like it is very simple, right? And very natural. That if we just are curious and we want to solve a problem and we're comfortable kind of making the other person uncomfortable a little bit at times, then you're going to succeed with that, right? And not that weird uncomfortableness, like you've got them back in the corner of the wall and they're burying their teeth, but it's like that you've made them think about something, and you've touched a couple of points that really trigger the emotions that are involved with making decisions.
Absolutely. Um, we we want to be comfortable with them being uncomfortable, them
Hmm.
being the prospect and the buyer.
Right.
We want to be able to take them there. Um, we want them to think differently about their problem. And sometimes they don't even realize what their problem is. They
Right.
think the symptom is the problem when the problem is really over here, that they've messed up this very beginning part. So
Mm.
it's a it's more of a methodology, and it's kind of simple. I mean, we have a sales process that we follow, but if we think about a methodology, that salesperson really needs to be curious. They need to be curious about why somebody's doing something, why they continue to do it, what's important, what do they tried to fix this? That curiosity is going to be a really effective tool. Then we should be a little skeptical of of the silly answers we get from a buyer. We should be able to push back a little bit when they say something that doesn't jive with something else that they've said. So that
Mm.
skepticism, right? You can't be a jerk about it, but
No.
we should be able to be skeptical. And I think the other two things are really actively listening to what somebody is saying, and addressing the question that they're asking, listening to the answer that you get, and making sure that there's a connection between what we think we heard and what they actually said, right? There's a big gap there usually. And
Yeah.
then when you get really good at sales, whatever the system is that you follow, you can't use it as a weapon. You really have to be empathetic to that buyer. If you don't care that they got a problem, if you don't care that it's costing them a lot of money, and you don't demonstrate that desire to, just really understand, right? It's like, yeah, we can solve your problem, right? That's a different issue. But really understanding and being empathetic of somebody's situation, you're going to bring them in, and that's where you start to build the trust. And if you just roll over it and try to close for the sake of closing, you're going to sound like that old style salesperson that everybody hates
Oh,
from
you
the
mean what can
60s
I
and
do to get
70s.
you into this green card today, Mr. Smith?
Yeah, those are so when you think of salespeople, that's what people think of: the plaid coat, the clip-on tie, the short sleeve shirt, right? And it pressed really hard because the third copy is yours. Like that's gone. We don't Salespeople are the buyers are coming into the sales cycle much later than they were even 10
Yeah.
years ago.
And
And they're more
much more aware and knowledgeable of what they want. And I'm thinking to myself, when buyers today, they've trolled you, they've gone through, they've done all their research, most people, right? And they're coming in to make their final buying decision between you and somebody else or a third person. And so now they're just looking at, okay, what are the minor nuances that they want, right? I mean, because if you're talking to someone that hasn't done the research, it's going to be a longer sales cycle, a lot longer.
Mhm. Well, but even when they think they know what they want, right? They might have it wrong. They might be off. Um, and we got to make sure that what they think is the problem is really the problem. And
Mm,
that's where that skepticism comes into play. I had
okay.
somebody call me it was a few months ago, and he wanted, "Hey, can you help me with closing, teaching my salespeople how to close?" Yeah, sure. Well, why do you think they have a close problem? Well, we were closing at 43%. Now we're closing at 30%. Okay, but why do you think it's them not knowing how to close? Same people, right? Same product, nothing changed. Well, no. Well, okay, something changed. What changed? So 20 minutes later, we figured out that they changed their formula for what went into their pipeline.
Mm.
So it was inevitable that the closing would go down because of all the crap that they were putting in their pipeline. So the
Mm,
the easy thing would have been to sell him closing training, right? Because he would have got what he wanted,
right.
right? He
Wouldn't
would
have solved the
ultimately
problem though.
and he would ultimately been upset. Um,
Yeah.
so instead of wasting the time and resources, it's really about fixing the underlying problem, usually. So and that's not always the case. Sometimes they have it figured out, and then we have to, work through about why would they work with us opposed to somebody else. But often you have to really look at what they're asking for. Is that alignment with what their real issues are?
Nice. So do you think the problem with hiring your sales team and the people that you bring on is more in what they were trained previously, or they don't have the mindset to be curious and skeptical with the conversation that they're having?
Um, I think it's a little, even a little bit more simple than that. They're hiring salespeople the same way they hire all of their other employees, right? And anybody that stops and thinks about salespeople, we're different. We're
Mm,
weird. We're an aberrant bunch. Um, and often the salesperson is better at interviewing than
mm,
the hiring manager.
Isn't that funny?
And but we should be able to sell something that we're familiar with, right? Ourselves. So they can take that interview in a different direction. So I think fundamentally you have to switch your approach to hiring salespeople. And it's not 180 degrees, but it is different. And I can give you an
Okay.
example. Stop selling your company and the job to the salesperson before you decided that this is the right salesperson. Everybody's excited about our culture and everybody's excited about how much money you can make in the job. Let's figure out if we have a candidate that's qualified to do the job, right?
Mm,
So fundamentally, that's a big shift for people. So
yeah.
how do we do that? Well, we take a couple of steps back and think about not what the accountabilities and responsibilities are of the role, but what do we need them to be good at?
Skill
What do
sets.
we
Yeah.
skill sets and mindsets? And to what end, right? Because sometimes we have a sales job, which is a combination of business development, account management.
Mm,
Sometimes we have a pure business development job where you just go out and try to find new logos and new business. And account management is a different role. Like we're going
more
to have
customer service.
customer service, but we're going to have to sell within the one organization or 10 organizations, depending upon how big the accounts are. So we want to grab share of wallet as opposed to new business. So it's a slightly different approach and it's a slightly different skill set than going out prospecting for new stuff, doing cold work. So it's
Got
really
it.
getting that straight first. What is it we're looking for? And then if we know what we're looking for, then we can dial in the skill sets and the mindset that we need to be successful. So it's really going back and think about this person needs to be great at selling value. This person needs to be great at asking questions. This person needs to be great at going and opening up new accounts.
Are your podcast guest appearances leading to real business, or are you just hoping that listeners will take action? With the Profit Booster Podcast Monetization Hub, we turn your interviews into lead generating machines so that you capture, nurture, and convert listeners into paying clients. So stop leaving money on the table and get started today at profitboosterpod.com.
And it's a different skill set. So
I
I
I
see,
love it. And I didn't think about going back to the interview process and really asking those kind of questions or looking at those kind of skill sets because you're right. When you look at a resume, they've built themselves up to be, all this great stuff, right? And oh, I've done this and I've done that and I look really great, right? But in reality, do they have the ability to do the tasks that you need them to do? Because I think that that's you know again in that liking story that we talked about earlier, oh, I may like you, Walter, and I want to have you on my team because I'm really excited about it, but you may not have that skill set I'm looking for, or you may not be able to handle the emotional rejection of going out cold calling all the time and getting brand new accounts rather than where I would feel more comfortable and my safety spot would be working existing accounts and deepening that relationship. So we have two different skill sets that we would thrive better in.
well, you're setting that person up for failure
Yeah.
is a way to look at it. You're going to waste a ton of your time and resources as an entrepreneur hiring people that aren't a good fit. So
Makes total
if we
sense.
if we flip that and really think about what needs to be good, what they need to be good at, it will it will change that perspective. And the other thing that you mentioned earlier that's really important is you got to have experience. Our business is unique. We do this something that nobody else does. They have to have
Sure.
worked in our industry before. And it's just like a resume. That's crap. It's not true. You need somebody that is really good at sales. You need somebody that's really good at talking to the buyer. So
Mm.
what I mean by that is, if you're selling a product that a safety manager in a manufacturing facility would buy, right? So you know who your buyer is, and you know you can dial that in very specific. Who else calls on them? And they might be selling something completely different, but if they're calling on that buyer, they know what that buyer cares about. They know what that buyer, the language that they use. They understand how to navigate that organization and get to that particular buyer. So it's less about your product. It's more about, can this new salesperson, can this candidate talk to our buyer? Can they relate to them? And
Mm.
maybe they have, I'll date myself here, maybe they have a Rolodex
What's
of
that?
people that are already in that space. So it's less about knowing your product. I mean, there's exceptions, right? If
Sure.
somebody's a rocket scientist and they
But
got to
that can
be
be
able to,
learned. That's a skill set that can be learned about my product and my features and benefits and the solutions that I provide. But that other skill set that you said, navigating how to get into that place, that's something that, takes a lot longer to learn.
if you don't have to teach that, and all you have to do is teach them what questions to ask that buyer to get them to understand your product is a better fit, right? Features and benefits, last thing we should teach somebody, right?
Oh.
What are the questions that that buyer needs to be asked to help them see that we have a better mousetrap?
Mm.
So it's navigating that buyer. And usually those two things help somebody understand, wow, we don't do that, and it sounds like it might help us get better candidates, right? There's other things in terms of our process, but those two fundamental things, if if anybody that's listening to that, if you just go out and challenge your current system of hiring and add those two components, you will elevate the candidates that you bring on, just through that exercise of those two things. And every resume from a sales perspective has crap in it. There's
BS.
a little BS.
There's a lot of
Um,
BS.
I'm being kind. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
I've
no. So that's actually really interesting because when you think about it, it's like you want somebody that's, charismatic and you're thinking that they're going to have all these connections and they're going to know people and know how to schmooze and but that's not necessarily what you want from somebody. You want that caring individual that's going to be empathetic, that's going to be able to be curious and ask those questions and find ways to solve their problems. And then, like you said, the last thing is the features and benefits and the price point, because that really shouldn't matter at all because we're not offering something that's so, unusual that it's not, that somebody else hasn't, you don't have a competitor, right? You're right there. But yeah, it's really interesting how we look at that differently. And then it's no longer about your brand messaging and all those crazy things that we want to say. It's about the connection that you can make.
yeah. If you're hiring somebody because they've got a great personality and they're fun to talk to and they're charismatic, um, put them in a marketing role that are going
Yeah.
to go out and do networking, right?
Yeah.
Because if you go out and grade in a room and network with people, and that's all you're good at, are you going to show up on Monday and call those people? Are you going to cold call people, right? They're different skill sets. And what we
Yeah.
found in the last 10 years is that intrinsically motivated people, as opposed to extrinsically. So extrinsically are motivated by money and things. Intrinsically are motivated by wanting to be part of something bigger than them, wanting to do good works, wanting to learn and grow as a professional. So, and those people are typically a little more shy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so two of the best salespeople I know, and I consider myself in this idea that they're really shy. We'd rather not be on stage. We'd rather not be in a room full of people. It's just we have to go out and do a job and a role, so we turn it on. and we can do, we can be energetic, we can be excited, and we could be happy to have this conversation, right? But when in reality, we'd rather be back home, reading a book or doing something on a computer, right? That's there's a difference there. But somebody has to be able to turn that role on and fill this. So we look at you're a salesperson as one role in your life. You could be a son, you could be a daughter, you could be an aunt, you could be an uncle, you could be great on the barbecue, you could be a wonderful brother. But we're talking about one role in your life, and that's in sales. So what are they going to perform in that one role, right? We
Mm,
don't want them to be a criminal. We want them to have ethics and integrity. We want them to fit into our culture. Those are all
right.
important things. But if they can go out and be comfortable networking it doesn't necessarily make them a great salesperson, because they have to go out and um, be much more effective and dig much more deep than in a sales call, doing great discovery.
That's a really, really good point because many smaller companies will hire one person or a couple of people as their sales team, and they'll ask them to market. And then they'll ask them to close the deal. And then they'll ask them to follow up and deliver kind of not deliver the service or product, but stay engaged with them throughout. Those are three distinct different roles that take many times three completely different personalities, as you just described. So, in my mind, to hire correctly for that sales role, you need someone that is really, truly knows how to have that conversation and close the deal versus developing a business marketing plan to get awareness for the company and then the opposite or the follow-up end of keeping the client engaged through more relationships. I think those are different personalities. Am I wrong?
No, they're different personalities usually. They're different skill sets. But when you have a small company and you're trying to build a sales team, right, you're asking everybody to wear multiple hats, because
Yeah,
as the entrepreneur, you're wearing 12 different hats in the course of a day. So do we expect our people to do the same thing? And to a certain extent, that's fair if we've told them that, if we've explained it to them, and we give them the right tools.
yeah.
So here's another common mistake that we have along with what you just said, is that we hire somebody that's a really competent salesperson, and then we want them to figure out how to talk to our buyers. And that's the role of the company. We need to tell our salespeople what that messaging is. We need to
Mm,
give them the right words, because our message in our marketing materials and our messaging from our salespeople, they need to fit together. They need to be congruent. And
ex-
if we just leave that up to our salesperson, we don't know what they're going to say, right?
right.
So we want to give them those bullet points. We want to give them that story that they need to work with. I like to couch it as a piece of sheet music, right?
Mm,
Here's the notes you play. You play them in this order. Got to play in the right key, and you got to play all the notes. But play them with your instrument. Do it your way. But here's what you have to go
right.
through. If we give them that guidance, a competent salesperson's like, all right, I know what I need to do, and they'll go do it. But if they got to figure that out, it's not going to be exactly what that entrepreneur wants, because the entrepreneur's been out there probably selling it themselves, and
Exactly.
they know this. So somehow we got to get that out of their head onto paper so we can translate it to a salesperson.
Right.
And if it's in your head, it's hard to get out on your own.
And for the business owner to accept the fact that I want them to play it on their own instrument, right? You may have been playing it with a violin and this guy may be playing it with a trumpet, but it's still the same message and it should have the same results if your customer likes to hear trumpets. You know?
Well, yeah, we have to, as a salesperson, we have to be able to modulate to our buyer.
Exactly.
Um, but we need the words to do that. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's that sometimes that entrepreneurs like, well, that's not how I said it. Well,
It's
that
okay.
we need to work on the end result, those messages, the questions that we need to ask,
Mm.
and then trust the process that is in place. And that's another challenge for entrepreneurs, is to have that process that we take that buyer through. But we can't leave it up to the salesperson.
Ugh, exactly. And I think that's the leadership problem that the misconnect with their sales team is they're like, well, you said you're good at sales. I need you to close this number each month for this dollar amount. Why aren't you doing it? Right? They don't have the tools. You didn't give them the information that you needed to be able to make that work out, which is interesting because, like you said, it's all stuck up here. And it's just natural for me to, go out and talk to people about my product that I created. And now I'm asking a person over here that's never had that product to go out and act like me. Not a
It's
not a
it's
very not a very good path for success in my mind.
it's not, and you got to give them a fighting chance. So it's just a process to get that out, think
Yeah.
about why people buy, and to put those into the right context for the salesperson to go have the right conversations with the right buyers.
Love it. So when you develop systems like this, which I assume you do in your company, you develop the systems, you get the questioning and the training, and you, like you mentioned in the original story, you don't just work on the closing process, but you work on the questioning, you understand the whole system that you're going through. That creates a success, right? I mean, you have to have a system or a plan to sell your product, just as you did to run your business or, market your company. You have to have the plan.
If you want to grow and you want to invite other people to the party and for them to execute the way you want them to, you need to have the structure.
Mm,
I often call it infrastructure,
mm,
but so there's messages, there's a sales process, there's a methodology, which we've talked about. You got to hire the right people,
yeah.
and then you have to manage them. And
Mm,
you need to have somebody that understands sales management isn't about keeping their head buried in a CRM. It isn't about going out and closing business for salespeople. It's about coaching and getting your current staff to get better,
mm,
to grow. And most sales managers haven't had a great model to to model themselves after to be a good sales manager. Entrepreneurs or they think, oh, this person's a great salesperson. They sell the most, so they should be able to manage the rest of these people. Huge mistake. Never promote your top salesperson to sales management, because it's a disaster waiting to happen. Different skill sets.
yeah,
Um,
exactly. And they are different skill sets, and there's so many different moving parts that need to be part of the sales of your product and service. And I think that's the again the missing piece is they're expecting someone to come in that like you said that's their top salesperson, and now you're asking them to lead people and coach them. That's not their skill set. Or now you're expecting the salesperson to come over here and design a trade show booth or a graphic that's going to come out and present it's just a different skill set. So yeah, I think entrepreneurs, our people need to wear different hats, but we have to, sales is so important because it feeds everybody else. Why don't you work on that piece first and then backfill the other pieces along the way, I think, as you're building your team. But yeah, I'm a fan of not necessarily crossing the salesperson with other roles. Is that wrong?
it's a no, no. As I said, in a small company, it's hard. It's hard to hire all of those people initially, but I think
Right.
there's things that we can do if we're conscious of that. We're asking our salesperson to be a marketer as well as a salesperson, and then customer service. Something's going to give, right?
Mm.
So if we want them to
Hopefully
be a
it's not the sales side.
salesperson, well, but often it is, because the other things might be a little bit easier for them. It might be
Mm.
safer to go have some marketing conversations with people. It might be safer to go talk to an existing customer as opposed to go out and
Mm.
talk to that new logo. So, you really got to find that balance. If you have limited resources, You really want to make sure that you're giving that salesperson the best chance to be successful by having them focus on the thing that you need them to focus on. And it goes back to what we said earlier about having clarity about what they need to be good at. And if we didn't say they needed to be great at marketing, then they shouldn't be doing marketing.
Love it. Love it. All right, Walter, this has been a great conversation. And I know there's so many little nuances that business owners today really need to have on their sales team, and especially when they're hiring somebody, in an early phase of their company. Where can listeners find out more about you and Helix Sales Development so that they can really gather what they need to make their sales team successful?
Um, I'm fairly active on LinkedIn. It's a great place to go just to kind of get a sense as to who I am. But I do a weekly email that I call Sales Velocity,
Mm,
and it's free. And the topic is, here's something that I screwed up, a mistake that I made over my 40 years. Don't do this,
love it.
right? So there's an explanation of like what I thought and then what I did and then the outcome, and then here's what you should do. So it's a really easy way of reading. It takes you like 3 minutes to read something, and the goal is to get you to think differently about a problem. I don't do pitching in there. It's really just like, here's some help. And if you want to engage with me, this is the best way
Excellent. Where can they
to
find
reach
that?
out. They can find that at my website, and it's just called Join Sales Velocity.
Okay,
It's
awesome.
also on LinkedIn. They can click on that, and but it's right off the website, helixsalesdevelopment.com.
Love it. Perfect. Perfect. Thank you. Wow. Yeah, I'm definitely going to grab that too because, as an entrepreneur and a marketer and the salesperson, I mean, it's like there's a lot to have. So to have that skill set and those little, what did you think? Or, have you thought about it this way? Will always help because if we're a constant learner, then this is going to be the way that we can get things rolling. So awesome. All right. Thanks for tuning in today. I hope you picked up some valuable insight and actionable ideas that will help you make your business more profitable. And, profitability starts with sales. So why not learn to be a better salesperson and hire a better sales team? All right. If you're ready to simplify your marketing and get better results, go grab a free 30-day trial of the Profit Booster Marketing Hub. No credit card required and no headaches, no tech headaches, no just smart, streamlined marketing that works. Head over to profitbooster.biz and get started today. Don't forget to subscribe. You don't want to miss future shows. You can always find Profit with a Plan on any of your favorite podcast platforms. And we're looking forward to more great profitable information on next week's show. So until then, make your plans and profit with them. Thanks so much, Walter. This is great.
Appreciate it. Thank you.